Yo, what is up, guys? It's Pedro here. So the Washington Commanders made a couple moves going into this big game against the Atlanta Falcons. Also, an injury update on Bill Krosky-Merritt. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and that notification bell as well. We're 30 subscribers away, guys. 30 from 16,000. Let's go ahead and do it. Hit that like button, all that good stuff as well. So I know there's a bunch of good games today, so I'm sure you guys are going to watch it. But we'll watch this first or during halftime or whatever. The Commanders made a couple moves, and a little bit surprising, and I'm sure disappointing for some of you guys. They elevated cornerback Antonio Hamilton and Tay Martin. Cool. They needed maybe another cornerback because Jonathan Jones is out still for this game and the next two games at minimum, and they needed another receiver. Tay Martin, with the receiver room is not looking great right now, and I know a lot of people who are kind of upset that I was saying it's a disaster. I'm not saying the future of it is a disaster, but just going into this week and the next week, when your wide receiver 2 is like Luke or Chris Moore, probably, it's just not a good wide receiver room. I'm not pressing the panic button and saying, it's the end of the world for this team and for this season, but, it's still not a good receiver room, no matter how you put it. That doesn't mean that Cliff and them aren't going to be able to find a way to cook something up and get this offense rolling. I don't have, doubts about that. I think they will, be able to cook something up. But still, the receiver room could use a couple more heads. But, Ja'Cory Brooks, I know a lot of people, including myself, wanted them to call him up, but they didn't, I guess because he's a rookie and, they don't know what they have in him versus, Tay Martin, they still don't necessarily know what they have in him, but the guy, does have some NFL experience. I know he did, play for the, the DC Defenders, and is a little bit older, 27 years old, has played 4 NFL games before, with Niners, with Titans, so has one catch. I guess he has a 49-yard catch, so, good for him and everything there, but, doesn't have a lot of, NFL experience, but I guess it's still more than someone like Ja'Cory Brooks. So, it makes sense that they, called him up, but it would have been cool if they called up Ja'Cory Brooks as well. They have the 4 receivers they have. It's going to be Jalen Lane, Debo, Luke McCaffrey, Chris Moore, and Chris Moore already is a replacement. So, you really only have 3 of your opening, 5 guys. And, now you bring in Chris Moore, which whatever, that's fine. They brought him in last week before last week's game, they called him up and you're to the 53 because, not even off the practice squad, like for the game day, they just put him on the 53 because of some of the injuries they had that, they were able to, move some guys around and put some guys on IR to make a move for Tay Martin. And he had a catch or 2 against the Raiders, so shout out to him. Now you got Tay Martin in the mix. So those are going to be your 5 receivers for this game. Not Terry McLaurin or Noah Brown, but Debo Samuel, Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane, Chris Moore, and Tay Martin are your 5 receivers for this game. My guess, maybe a bold prediction, is Chris Moore is their number 2 receiver against the Falcons tomorrow in terms of receiving yards. So that is my maybe bold prediction for the game, even though I don't think it's that bold. I really, really hope, though, Luke McCaffrey and Jalen Lane are able to step up a little bit, show something in this game, one of the two. We don't need both of them to, but just a little bit. Like Luke, we don't need to have a 90, 100-yard game and a touchdown or 2. Give me like 4 catches for 45 yards and, one of those or 2 of those catches be big, catches on like 3rd or 4th down. That to me will be really huge. And then Jalen Lane, do his thing in the punt return game, but then also, do a little bit as a receiver, do a little bit more than what he's been doing, which has been close to nothing, and he's going to get more of an opportunity now with some of these guys out, and just feed him the ball a little bit, see what he can do, give him the ball in space, maybe like some, I know they've tried on slant opportunities or screens, it just hasn't worked out, but part of that is just blocking in terms of screens. So let's see what he can do, give him some opportunities, and see how he is. Maybe he's not ready to get those opportunities, and in that case, that's fine. Give some of those targets to someone else, whether that's more to Debo, more to Luke McCaffrey, Chris Moore, Tay Martin, whatever. But at least see what you have in Jalen Lane offensively and see if maybe he's a little bit further along than you actually think. And in that case, that would be really good news for the Commanders, especially with Terry probably out for another week or two, and same thing with Noah Brown. Like, this is the receiving core going into the next few weeks. It's been a disaster in terms of their health, not just the receiving core, but the whole team. You got Terry, Noah Brown, Jaden Daniels. Those are Austin Eckler. Those are the offensive injuries, and you still got Sam Cosmi out. Defensively, Dietrich Wise, Will Harris, Jonathan Jones, like a lot of these guys are, and John Bates on offense. It's just been a disaster, and that's kind of more what I was saying yesterday with the receiving core. Not that I don't like Debo or Jalen Lane or Luke McCaffrey. It's just they should have better players there, and they don't, and it's a lot of it's because they have a lot of injuries with Noah Brown hurt and then also Terry McLaurin hurt. So it just makes the receiving core look a lot worse than it actually is when those guys are healthy, and it puts guys in situations that they weren't necessarily built to be. Like Jalen Lane in his rookie year, not expected to be a number 2 or a number 3. He was going to be like the 5th or 6th receiver. And, Luke McCaffrey, at least maybe going into the offseason is a little bit different, but going into the season, he's expected to be like the number 5 or number 6, and now it's number 2. Same thing with Debo. Like, he's not a number 1, so it just is not a good situation for them to be in, but I do think that Cliff Kingsbury can make it work. But real quick, a word from today's sponsor. And a huge shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring today's video. So I have a bunch of picks for the Commanders-Falcons game that I feel decent about. So the first pick is Bijan Robinson under 80.5 rushing yards. This run defense is good, and Bijan hasn't hit that mark in 2 of the 3 games. Chris Moore over 23.5 receiving yards, and Luke McCaffrey over 18.5 receiving yards. If he doesn't hit that, that's not good news for, especially Luke McCaffrey's future. So that's one kind of pick, and then the other one is Bijan Robinson over 0.5 rushing touchdowns. I think he'll get in once. And then Deebo Samuel over 7.5 rushing yards, and Marcus Mariota under 19.5 completions. I feel good about some of those plays. I think they're going to rely on the run game, get Debo involved there, Bill Krosky and Mara as well. So those are my picks. Make sure you guys tail them. If you do, let me know down below in the comment section, and use my code Pedro on Sleeper and get a 100% match up to $100. Link in the description. Terms and conditions apply. Alrighty, so we talked a little bit about the surprising move and maybe not calling up Ja'Cory Brooks, who, showed a lot in camp, showed a lot in the preseason, a lot more than someone like Chris Moore did. But I'm not going to, hate on Chris Moore too much, because so far in the season, Chris Moore's actually done some good things. So going into some other injury stuff, Percy Butler downgraded out with a hip injury. Not a big deal. It is what it is, but, it's unfortunate just because they do have some safety injuries. With Will Harris out, you would like to maybe have a lot of your guys available, but whatever, he's not there. I'm sure Darnell Savage will be active this week, considering they brought him in because Will Harris went down, and also now Percy Butler, some of your depth goes down. So they do have some good depth at the position. Tyler Owens, and then also Jeremy Reeves. Shout out to both of those guys for being undrafted free agents and getting significant playing time. Both being special team studs, absolute studs, both of them. Reeves, obviously, we know what he's done, but Tyler Owens, if you watch, he makes some good tackles too. And, it's just, as a gunner, he's super, super quick and able to, sometimes get some big hits. And also on defense, they're making plays too. Jeremy Reeves especially making some big, big hits. So Darnell Savage isn't going to have a lot on his plate. Maybe they're going to play him the whole game. I doubt it. I highly doubt it. But you never know. Maybe they feel really comfortable about it, and they'll play him from the start to finish. I think it'll be a little bit of mix of everything. Maybe even Reeves and Tyler Owens getting a little bit more PT than Darnell Savage does, but I'm excited to see what the former Terp can do in this game. All right, injury report. I made a video about this yesterday. If you guys want to go ahead and watch that, just talk about the injury report. So we're not going to talk about Bates, Brown, all that stuff. We already know they're out. Bill Krosky Merritt, he's questionable, and Percy Butler yesterday was questionable, downgraded out. I don't even know why he was listed as questionable when he didn't practice all week, but maybe that means he might be good to go next week. But Bill, DNP, and then full. So I think he's going to be good to go. Dan Quinn felt good about his work today, saying this yesterday. So I think he'll be good for this game. They said it was soreness, but he started to feel better middle of the week, so they just kind of had to rest him. That's fine. I'm expecting a solid day from him. It'll be another mix of him, Chris Rodriguez, and Jeremy McNichols. They still, Donovan Edwards and then Chase Edmonds are guys that they have on the practice squad. When they need to, they'll go ahead and call those guys up if they do end up needing some help at the running back position. But last week they looked fine in terms of McNichols, Bill, and then also Chris Rodriguez all made some big plays in the game. Jeremy McNichols had the 60-yard run. Bill had a nice touchdown run, also just had some good runs in general, and Chris Rodriguez had some pretty good runs on that first drive and even, later on in the game. So those guys all played well, so they're going to be important in this game against the Falcons, and the Commanders' defense is the X factor in this game. Let's just really, really shut down. Maybe not the X factor, but we just need this defense to step up. Just shut down the Atlanta Falcons offense that was putrid last week against the Carolina Panthers. Just absolutely putrid. So if the Panthers did it, we can do it too, and let's get this win. It is away. It's going to be a tough game with a lot of guys out, but these are the games that you have to win. When you have a lot of injuries, you're away, and your starting quarterback's not playing, the good teams find a way. So hopefully the Commanders can get the win. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace.